Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. I hope you're all doing great. This is our weekly Wednesday night live stream. Sorry, I just noticed the camera's a little bit askew here. Just gonna give that a fix. Brianna's here, if only just for a little bit, to say hi to folks. Rip me as per usual. Everyone commenting here.
I can't find the stream.
Can't find the stream? It should be up. It's there it is right there. You just missed it. No, so as per usual, we'll be talking about some of the latest happenings in politics. We'll talk about Obama's speech. We'll talk about AOC. We'll talk about this new FBI report. Apparently, they're saying that there may be foreign involvement in the election, and they're asking people to be extra careful. Samantha Sider with the super chat says, "Looking forward to your Among Us stream." We'll talk a little bit about a potential development. We're gonna see what happens there with regard to maybe doing a Canadian left Among Us stream. But we'll see about that. Right now, the Surfs and I have been talking about it. I've talked about it a little bit with a couple MPs, but we're not sure. Actually, just as I was coming on, this is on Twitter. I'll drop the link here. Ryan Letourneau, who is a large Canadian YouTuber, reached out to Jagmeet Singh. He's got almost 1 million followers on YouTube. I actually don't believe I ever heard of him, but he might be
Well, he's a gamer.
Yeah, he's a gaming YouTuber, and he said to Jagmeet Singh, at Jagmeet Singh, you want to play some Among Us? Singh says, "Is it cool if my people reach out?" And then Hasan, who was, of course, basically one of the organizers of the AOC stream, who I think knows, at least knows of Jagmeet, brought that up. And so basically, that seems to be independent of what we're doing. So we might get poached by some of the bigger dogs. We're not sure, but we're gonna see what happens. You know. So we're gonna see what happens there. So we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something I'm certainly into. We're gonna see if that happens. I mean, the AOC one was fantastic, right? It was absolutely fantastic. So, I've talked a bit about that in my video on it. Like, the reason it was great was it was people were having fun. That was the biggest reason, but also it's meeting young people where they are, and it's using Twitch the way it's meant to be used. Like, look, Bernie on Twitch did a great job, don't get me wrong, right? But the reality is that Bernie on Twitch was just sort of using it like you would use YouTube, right? You would using it just like you would use YouTube, or you might use a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live. He might take some questions from the chat, but like, he wasn't playing games. He wasn't really interacting with Hasan or any of the big YouTubers all that much, at least, and Twitch streamers. But it was still important. But AOC, got on there, played the hottest trending video game that everyone's playing right now on Twitch. A game that's designed to kind of be accessible, chill. It's a game where you can get a lot of friends, like 10 people at a time to play together. And it's designed for that kind of moment. And AOC really made the most of it. And so I think that was crucial. And again, if you want to make politics work, you got to meet people where they are. Mm-hmm. Right? You can't just put out a message, even if it's a good message, and expect people to just, did we go? No, it looks like we're okay. And expect people to just kind of follow your message. You have to meet people. And AOC met young people on Twitch in their platform. Any?
Yeah. Karen Sita has a comment.
Okay.
Are you gonna read it?
Oh, I thought you were.
Oh, is that why I'm here? I forget what I do on these streams. I just wanted to come here and make fun of you.
Yeah.
Literally. Can you put the thingy up so I can read it?
Yeah, for sure.
God, I don't come for a little while and you forget how to do this. Okay, it's Karen Sita with the super chat says, it's difficult to be in a sect when the guru isn't here. Brianna, we need you. Oh my god, she is here. Don't forget to like, folks. Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, like, people who know, right? I don't need to be here. You can just feel it.
Brianna has been very convinced that we need to start some sort of, like, cult, for lack of a better term, to, like...
Movement.
Movement. No, but she's...
A movement that I'm solely in charge of.
And that she can make lots of money from.
No.
Like, that was the... Like, you gotta start... Because there's no better way to make money than, like...
That's not what I said.
Yeah.
Nobody here believes that.
Yeah.
Go back so we can see what people are saying.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
I think you guys have, like, really let him off the hook.
Maybe.
Like, I sometimes come and, like, creep the comments and I don't say anything because, like, I'm busy. But, like, nobody is making fun of him. Nobody is calling him out. Everybody's just going with it. And I'm like, people need to, like, keep him accountable. I don't know.
I'm just one sec. Just talking with the serfs right now.
He's ignoring you guys right now.
No, well, because we were talking, I sent a note to Lance from the serfs, and I was like, you know, this Ryan guy, who I guess we didn't know much about him. YouTube's such a big platform. You could have like 900,000 subs, and like not everyone knows you, right? So, he reached out to Jugmeat, and on the back channel, we're talking with Guratan, who's Jugmeat's brother in the Ontario NDP MP, talking with Matthew Green about it. And basically, we'll probably welcome him aboard if he wants to do it, but we'll see. Nothing's confirmed yet, whether it's happening or if I'm involved or if the serfs are involved, but I certainly would love to do it. And I think it would be a lot of fun. And I think that, you know, we avoided an election today in Canada, but, you know, who knows when the next one's going to come, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we have another super chat from David Vospor. And he says, good evening, Christo and Bree. Canadian Podcast Fund. Donate. Beer is better than margaritas. Yes, beer is way better than margaritas. And Bobby Hill says hello.
David, thank you so much for the support. Love all of that, except you are objectively wrong about margaritas not being as good as beers. Margaritas are delicious, and they contain an essential amount of vitamin C, which beers do not.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do. They have limes in them. They have limes. They're healthy for you. It's a fruit group.
No.
Whereas beer is just another carb, right? Margaritas has essential, like, essences in them. Yeah. That's what I'm going with anyway. But no, we're certainly appreciative of the support. I am working towards a Canadian podcast. You know, it's just like we're still waiting for the right moment to look at sending our son back to daycare. We're getting closer to it, but we just want to make sure things are safe. We don't live, like, where we live, we're not in a hot spot, but, you know, we want to wait a little bit. I'm fortunate enough that, you know, I can do a lot of my work with my son, whereas most people I know can't. And so that's something that we're waiting just a little bit. And so when I want to do a lot of these other projects, whether it's more videos or writing or streaming or podcasting, it's just, I need to unlock more time, and I just don't have that yet, but it is something we're working towards. Pina coladas are good. Yeah. See, really, guys, I'm just going to be honest, and I'm probably going to lose some support. I'm just not a beer guy, right? Like, I'm not necessarily...
I love craft beer. I love the craft beer movement. Like, one of the, like, bonuses to come out of the pandemic is that you can get craft beer shipped to you from all over Ontario. It's like, I hope that stays when this eventually goes back to normal. But yeah, craft beer is really where it's at, and where we live is like a hot spot. So
yeah,
that's been good. Mixed drinks give you such a hangover. Like, such a hangover.
Yeah.
But if you get a good whiskey, like a nice whiskey you can sip on, I'd be there with you.
Yeah.
I'd be there.
So we also Nikki Ashton just responded to one of those messages saying she doesn't play much video games other than Tetris, but she might be in. So that would also be interesting. So something might come together. About this Canadian Among Us stream. So we're going to see.
All right. Jay Camacho says fruits and vegetables are the same. I think that is categorically not true.
I mean...
I think they're different because they are different.
Well, but see, culturally though, there's a lot of things like a tomato. It's a fruit, like scientifically.
Yeah.
But at least in our food cultures, most Western food cultures, it's a vegetable, right?
Yeah.
So fruits and vegetable. I don't know.
There's a difference between a cultural fruit and a vegetable, and then a scientific fruit and vegetable.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
So I would say it depends, right? Like, I would say fruits and vegetables are definitely, like, on the food group, they're often included in the same camp, right? Like, when they say you have your grains, you have your proteins, you have your fruits and veggies, they might recommend a specific amount of, say, green veggies, because, you know, you probably shouldn't just eat pineapple and blueberries or whatever. You should probably eat some broccoli, but, you know, they are all kind of included, at least indirectly.
Lisa says wine. She needs to support the wine industry.
Yeah. I mean, we both rather enjoy our wines. So
this is very far away from politics, though.
Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to. Oh.
Okay, put that on and I can read it.
Yeah.
I want to swear, but I won't. Nope. But I saw Obama earlier saying that people who stayed home last time, quote, got lazy. I can't stand him. He is a fraud.
Yeah. Okay, well, this is great. One, thank you for the support, Eric Aquarius. Is that how we say it? Let us know.
Eric Aquarius.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Obama and both Michelle and Barack, like, because on their podcast, they've been doing this as well, where they've basically been saying, like, oh, people got lazy last time. They got lazy in 2010 during the midterms and, you know, during the non-presidential elections under Obama, and they didn't vote, and that's the reason why Republicans won, and that's the reason why we didn't get as much done as we wanted. And I just think that's BS. And again, I'm someone who, again, I'm not yelling at people that aren't voting for Joe Biden, but I'm basically telling people that Donald Trump is awful and he needs to go. And so I would, if I was an American, I'd be voting for Joe Biden. I would, especially if I lived in a swing state. You know, maybe anyways, but, you know, if I lived in Michigan or if I lived in Florida or if I lived in, Ohio or Pennsylvania, then yeah, I'd probably cast a vote for Biden and Harris. Again, I wouldn't be happy about it, but I probably would. But to blame voters is so short-sighted. There's a reason why people didn't show up for Obama in 2010. And, like, it's because you ran on hope and change, and you didn't deliver hope or change for most regular working class people. Yeah, like, you were better than Bush in some ways, but, like, you ran on this, like, the rhetoric of the left, and then you got your cabinet picks vetted by Goldman Sachs, who then got bailed out by your government when the economy, like, you know, when like the banks were failing. And so people saw you for 2 years, and they saw that you actually didn't achieve all that much, even though you had a far bigger number of senators and control of the House than Trump does right now. Obama nearly had 60. And I get it. Lieberman was technically like an independent, and he often voted with the Republicans, whatever. The point is, like, you had a very big majority in the Senate. You controlled the House. You won a huge victory as president. You won a ton of electoral college votes, a way bigger win than either of Bush's wins, for instance. Like, you know, it wasn't quite as big as Reagan's wins, but they were big wins. And you really didn't do much with it. And so people got disillusioned and they stayed home. Right? And then yes, because of racism and because of intolerance, a lot of people mobilized against Obama because they didn't like the fact that a black man was president. But it was also like you pretended to do all these big important things, thus angering conservatives, but you didn't actually do the things, thus alienating the left. And so it's the kind of pincer that politicians like Obama or Trudeau in Canada create. They do all the symbolism, and the symbolism matters. Like, symbolism matters. I think identity politics matter. I don't think it's a bad word. Identity matters. Class is an identity too, guys. Identity politics are good and important. But when you only do those things, you piss off conservatives that want to see marginalized people suffer. That's that they want to see them suffer. It's not actually about anything. They just want people to suffer. And so they're mad that they're no longer suffering as much. But then people are still like, great, I need health care. I need a job. I need education to not cost $90,000, $100,000, $200,000. I need some of those things, please, Mr. Obama, sir. And he doesn't give you those things. So those people are like, I'm out. And then the other people are like, well, you're still a crazy commie lib who, wants to make Sharia law the law of the land in the United States. Like, why are you like, and so that's what happened. And so Obama, whether it's this election or 2016 or during his midterm elections, like the Democrats bear the primary responsibility. The Democrats bear the primary responsibility. I am telling people, all things being equal, it might be a good election to vote for Joe Biden. Because again, one of the arguments I've heard a lot of people make is, if elections mattered, they wouldn't let you vote. Well, what's Donald Trump trying to do in this election? More than any president I've ever seen in my life, he's trying to steal your vote. He's trying to invalidate entire mail-in ballot processes. He's making the post office weaker so they can't get ballots in on time. He's making it harder for people to vote. The Republicans, not just Trump, but the Republicans in the Senate and in the House have made it harder for African Americans to vote. Republicans all over the country have made it harder for Black and Hispanic and young people to vote. Urban people in general. Look at what they're doing in Texas. These are Republicans. Democrats aren't perfect. They forced the Green Party off some ballots. That's not right. It's not right. But there's no comparison. Trump is literally wanting to say that I cannot lose. It's probably a good time to vote against Trump. Yet, ultimately, if Trump wins, the blame does not rest with the voters. The blame rests with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Right? That's who it rests with. And the people running their campaigns and all of that. Doesn't rest with Bernie Sanders. Doesn't rest with, Kyle Kalinske. They're going to try to blame like big YouTube. They won't blame me because I'm a nobody. But they're going to try to blame Kyle Kalinske and they're going to try to blame whoever. But at the end of the day, it's Joe Biden's fault if Joe Biden loses. And he's made a calculation, right? He's made a calculation. He said, look, I'm going to go after more moderate voters. I'm going to try to win seniors. And that's fair. Like, look, Joe Biden has won more elections than I've won. So if he wants to, run an election and try to win with certain voters, that's fine. The consequences of that are you potentially leave people out on the other side. Mm-hmm. So I disagree with Obama there. And I find it very rich. That he, in a lot of his speeches, he actually put out a video last night on Twitter and on other social media platforms where he was basically like, one of the things I really loved this year is how young people have been getting more and more engaged. Mm-hmm. Whether it's in the electoral process or whether it's in protesting, both like Black Lives Matter, but also climate justice, all of that. He says very inspiring. And it is inspiring. It is. I don't know if it actually is to Obama, if he's being genuine, but it's inspiring to me. Like, kids today are so much more engaged than when Bree and I were teenagers. Bree and I we're in our early 30s.
Don't tell them how old I am.
We're in our early 30s. Bree is...
That's enough.
Yeah.
That's
we are
enough.
We are in our early 30s, and we can remember, like, a time where it was... We can remember a time where, like, kids weren't engaged in high school. Mm-hmm. Like, not systematically around, say, something like environmentalism. It wasn't like that. And now it is. And it is like that with racial justice in a lot of places. And kids now in Canada care about Indigenous issues. These things matter. Mm-hmm. And Obama's right to say it, but then you have a situation where he's ignoring the elephant in the room, which is like all of those young people mobilized behind one candidate, and you guys know who he is, Pete Buttigieg. So, Bernie Sanders, of course. They all mobilized behind Bernie Sanders on an unprecedented level. People say, oh, the youth didn't come out. Youth voted in a higher percentage than they ever have, I believe. Certainly more than average in the Democratic primary. But older folks than that came out in even bigger numbers and all voted for Joe Biden. And so the lesson is Obama's like, you young people inspired me. But then also I brought together Pete Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, Beto O'Rourke, Michael Bloomberg, and like countless other people to at the one moment crush the dreams of Gen Z and millennials and probably younger Gen X voters, all of whom wanted Bernie. Mm-hmm. So he's like, I love you kids. I mean, I crushed your hopes and dreams and destroyed your viable candidate that would have almost certainly defeated Donald Trump because Trump is doing awfully right now. And I think almost anybody would have beaten him. But like, you kids inspire me. And so it's so rich, right? Like, yeah. Look, Obama's undeniably a great speaker. And his speech today was great. And as I noted in the title, he did a great job where he roasted Trump over the Chinese bank account. And look, I'm not a xenophobe. I'm not like one of these like people that's like Russia, China. Like, look, Russia and China have their own interests and like they're going to promote those interests just like the U.S. does. If the U.S. meddles in elections, so does Russia and China. It's a reality, but like it's not the reason Hillary lost. You know what I mean? But like, I get why businessmen in China American businessmen and businesswomen who do a lot of international business would need bank accounts in China. It's the second biggest economy in the world, and it's certainly going to be the first biggest in the next generation or so. And that's fine, but it is kind of pointing out Trump's hypocrisy, right? Mm-hmm. Because Trump has made everything, China wants Biden to win, and Biden's going to sell us out to China, and China's evil, and China this, and China that. When it's been estimated that Trump has paid hundreds of times more taxes, to China in recent years than he has to the United States of America, at least in federal taxes. And so it's kind of good. And Obama had that great line where he's like, God, if I did this, Fox News would be calling me Beijing Barry. And it just reminds you of like, love him or hate him, the man was just a great politician. Like, tell me let me know in the comments. If Obama was allowed to run third term, there's no way he would have lost, right? Especially given the alternatives. Like, there's no way that like, the people would have chosen Hillary or Trump over Obama, right? Like, because here in Canada, there's no term limits. We don't have term limits. Our prime ministers can serve for 1 day or for 30 years. As long as they have the confidence of the House of Commons, they can govern, right? Like, Mackenzie King, he was prime minister from like 1921 to 25, and then from like 26 to 30, and then from 35 to 48. Yeah. Thereabouts. He was prime minister for a long time. Mm-hmm.
You have a bunch of super chats.
Yeah, we're gonna get to those. I just wanted to kind of filter
also,
that.
People are making fun of me for not wanting to share my age. That's fine. I can take a little bit of ribbing. That's okay.
Well, did you want to let people know?
No.
Okay. Okay.
No. I would have told people I was in my late 20s.
I just had to refresh
Thanks.
there. Yeah. I had to refresh there. We'll get to those, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to read this question, and then I think I have to go do work.
Okay.
But before I do read the question, I just want to throw it out there that I would totally be down to do like a craft beer tasting and like do it on YouTube, and like we could like chat politics or whatever, like as we're doing like tastings, and we could set out the list so that people could taste along with us. I think that would be cool.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you not to read Shea Zeus's. Jamal Harris says about 72. You guys are God. Oh. Well, I'll give you guys one thing. If Bree was mad at me for anything today, you guys just took the heat off. She's like, I was gonna rip you after this stream, but somebody called me 73.
But yeah, if you guys would like to do, we could do that.
Yeah.
Like host like a craft beer tasting night and talk politics and
Yeah.
you know, stuff like that. But anyway, let Christo know if you guys be into it. So we're up.
Okay, we are. I think this was the most recent one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's from AK the Scholar, and also Jay Comcho was asking about it in the comments.
Okay.
So he says, can you cover the End SARS movement in Nigeria? And then I'm out.
Yeah. So thanks for that, AK. It's certainly something. Can you get me pass me my water, please?
What did your last servant die of, Christo?
I would like some water, please. Thank you. So for those who don't know, there's a huge protest going on in Nigeria. And I have to say, to my detriment, it's something that I haven't been paying as much attention to as I should, frankly. But it's something very, very important. At first, honestly, I got confused by the hashtag when I saw it because I heard end SARS. And I thought to SARS, the illness that was, so prominent like 20 years ago, right? Back when I was just a young guy. And so that's definitely what I thought. But it's about like police violence in Nigeria. It's something I certainly want to look more into. But I mean, I rarely go beyond Canada and the US because I don't mind going a little bit off color on Canadian and American politics because I talk about them a lot, and because those are like two first world powerful countries, and so like whatever. But when I speak about it, like developing nations or nations of the world that are still victims of like imperialism and colonialism, I want to be very careful. And I also struggle sometimes on my own end to get media that I can trust isn't just like CIA.com, right? You know what I mean? Or like it's a website that's clearly run by the CIA. So I mean, sometimes I'll speak a bit about the UK because I'm a bit more comfortable there. Sometimes I'll speak a bit about Latin America because I've had a long time interest there. There's a certain proximity, and I've built a basis of people and sources I can trust about, like for instance, rest in peace, people like Michael Brooks, who have been very good resources in understanding. Yeah, rest in power, and peace and power to Michael Brooks, of course. But it's something that I want to be careful about. Right. The one thing about Nigeria, I will say, is that unlike some other countries, they English is an official language there, and so it is more plausible that I can get access to info. Whereas with some countries, it's like, I don't speak Italian, or I don't speak Arabic, or I don't speak Cantonese or Mandarin, and I don't read those languages either. So I want to be very careful. So that's not me saying no, but that's me saying I need to really look into it. Sometimes what I do with some of these stories is I look for the angle that's a bit more domestic. Like, how is Canada or the United States responding to this issue, which is something that I feel a little bit more comfortable commenting on. Like, for instance, when I did do a video, I've done videos on Bolivia, but many of that stuff has related to what are Bernie and Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh and Donald Trump saying about Bolivia, which is, I think, more in my wheelhouse. Right? So, like, it's certainly something. I stand with the protesters. Their cause is just. I saw that Beyonce commented on it, which to me is wild. That, like, because I don't see Beyonce comment too often on political things. So, it's something certainly to look forward to. So yeah. Lisa says, Christo Aivalis, did you see the CBC article today that stated the Alberta UCP wants to remove residential schools in the new education curriculum and insert creationism? Lisa, I did see that. So for those who don't know, for the United States, everyone loves to think Canada's great, but we have bad parties here too. And we have a conservative party, and they're not as bad as Trump. They're sort of a mixture of corporate Democrats and Republicans. And that's fine, but there's a party in Alberta called the United Conservative Party that does have a lot of pretty far-right views. And amongst other things, they're doing a curriculum review, and they're making some very troubling changes. And so residential schools, for those who don't know, were basically the places, you guys had them in the US, but they were more prominent here in Canada. But they were basically schools that were set up where Indigenous, Native American children were taken from their homes, often for the entire year, or certainly for the school year, against their will, and forced to live there and only speak in French or English, and be forced to learn either Catholic or Protestant doctrine, stop speaking their native languages, stop practicing their traditional practices, cultural and spiritual. And basically their goal was to, through education, quote unquote, destroy native culture. It was basically cultural genocide, right? And these schools were not just a long ago thing. They started actually before Canada officially became Canada, but they existed until 95 or 96. About then, the mid-1990s. I was still in grade school. There are Indigenous children my age. They're not children anymore, but there are Indigenous people my age that were in these schools against their will, stolen from their parents. And part of history is reckoning with it. And if you stop teaching it, people are going to forget about these things. And again, this is not ancient history. This is life. This is, people have lived this, not just old people. People younger than 40 have been in these like prison camps for children where they were stolen from their families. And so this government that doesn't like the fact that white people have to look bad because of what we did to Indigenous people wants to take it out of the curriculum. And now they want to add, the origin stories from various religious perspectives. Now, apparently, they want to include some of the Indigenous creationist stories as well, like how Turtle Island formed. But I mean, I think that's clearly like they're just saying that to cover their asses, because if you only include the Christian story, I guarantee you the it'll get challenged in court and likely shot down. But if you include multiple religions, the court might actually approve it. And so they're basically giving a wink and a nod to right-wing Christians, being like, yeah, we'll teach the other stuff, but just know your kid's actually learning the Bible in grade 1 or grade 2 of a public school, right? It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And just the curriculum's a joke in other ways. They're like, they want to teach kids about the architecture of our parliament building before they teach kids how parliament works and why parliament is important. Which is to say, you teach kids about neoclassical architecture in Washington before you teach them what the president, Congress, and Supreme Court does. It's BS, right? It's BS. So even beyond ideology, it's ridiculous. Yeah. So I have been seeing that. And I mean, this government's awful. They're climate change deniers. They keep trying to double and triple and quadruple down on oil, even though it really doesn't look like it's coming back. Yeah, they're awful. They're awful. They really are the closest thing Canada has to Republicans. They really are. They also wanted to teach people. They also wanted to teach people that most non-white people in Canada are Christian, and I don't know the motivation about that. I mean, it's true. That's true, but I understand the motivation. Maybe it was to try to make it look like Christianity isn't racist because it's most Canadians, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. Alex says, between Biden, Obama, Buttigieg, and White House, who's the most Chad neo-lib? Obama's probably the most Chad neo-lib, right? Or, like, he's in great shape, super confident. Yeah, I would say Obama's pretty Chad. Yeah, I would say so. Like, ideologically, he's awful, but, like, Obama is, like, he's charismatic. He seems likable. Frankly, like, he doesn't have any of the scandals personally. Like, personally, like, there's no Monica Lewinsky, Tara Reid type scandals. Obama doesn't, like, Obama is, like, in terms of personal stuff, like your personal life. Again, I'm not defending his drone strikes and stuff. I'm trying to think of a president where it's like, okay, if you had to know that person as a person, who would be okay? And I have to say that Obama might be up there among modern presidents, except for maybe like Jimmy Carter, who I think as a person is obviously a very, very kind person and a very generous person. And I think Obama definitely has that Chad mentality. Like, he's like confident but not too cocky. Yeah. Buttigieg is too much of a rat to be a Chad. Sheldon Whitehouse, I mean, I don't know if he's a Chad. Biden definitely had a bit of a jock vibe when he was younger, but maybe it's just I can't see it anymore. Biden 30, 40 years ago maybe, but not anymore. Or, yeah. Okay, then Justin has 3 questions. Justin, thank you so much for the support. Unfiltered thoughts on Amanda Alvaro, Anna Kasparian, and Annamie Paul. So with Amanda Alvaro, she's a liberal commentator here in Canada. When I say liberal, I don't just mean left. I mean, she, on a lot of the panel shows we have, like our CNN-style panel shows, she represents the Liberal Party. I mean, like, look, she's a hack. Is she a much bigger hack than other party hacks? I don't know. I certainly think she's particularly annoying on certain issues. But, you know, like, everybody's got party hacks that are bad. I think on the We issue, she was really bad. I don't know. I don't want to go after Amanda Alvaro too much. She's not, like, some big famous person. But, yeah, she look, if she's not a bigger hack than normal, she is like, she epitomizes hackery from the Liberal Party. Like, so put it another way, if you want to point to someone and say that is a hack for the Liberal Party, you can point to Amanda Alvaro. And maybe she's happy with that. Maybe she's like, okay, whatever. Like, that's what I aim to be, and that's what I am. So that's definitely something to look at. Let me check one thing here. Okay. Anna Kasparian, I mean, I haven't had any personal interactions with Anna. I mean, I don't know if the Young Turks people know who I am. Like, some of the Majority Report people know who I am. Kyle Kalinske follows me on Twitter. Obviously, David Dole, the Humanist Report. I'm in touch with some of these people, but I don't think I'm actually in connection with anyone from the Young Turks. So I've never really had a personal interaction with Anna. I like her. Like, frankly, I think she's got a good voice. I think I find I agree with her personally more often than I do with Cenk. I think Cenk is a bit more of a normie kind of like centrist, not centrist, but, you know, centrist leaning leftist. Whereas I think Anna is a bit more my speed. Like, I think there was a reason why her and Michael Brooks were working together on that Jacobin show. Of course, that we know that unfortunately we know what happened, but that her and Michael Brooks were kind of doing that project. That I think that, like, she has a viewpoint that's at least somewhat similar to Michael Brooks. Yeah, and I think she does a great job. I think she's great at what she does. So I'm a fan. You know, yeah. And Annamie Paul, for those who don't know who Annamie Paul is, she's the new leader of the Green Party, and which is in Canada. kind of centrist party. It might be the most centrist party. And I don't mean that as a good thing. I'm a leftist. But like, unlike in the US where the Green Party is like on the left to the Democrats on most issues, and more left than most Democrats, except for maybe on some issues like a Bernie type. The reality is that in Canada, they are kind of in between the Liberal Party, which is center-right, and the NDP, which is center-left to left, depending on the issue and the particular person in the party. And so, like, she seems okay from a personal perspective. I got nothing against her. I appreciate the historic nature of her victory. She is only the second person of color to lead a federal party with seats in parliament, and the first woman of color to do so. It's important, the first black person to do it, and really only the second black person to ever come close. Rosemary Barton came close in 1975. She almost beat Ed Broadbent, which was amazing. The first leader of color in parliament is actually Jagmeet Singh, the leader of my party, the NDP. But it seems like she's kind of gotten off on the wrong foot, if I say so, because she like the Green Party, she won the Green Party leadership basically running on nothing. The Green Party had 3 candidates that were good. And specifically 2 of them that were getting a lot of attention, especially Dimitri Lascaris, but Maryam Haddad and Amanda Kuttner was also doing some good stuff too. But they were running on making the Green Party an eco-socialist party. There were differences between Lascaris and Haddad. Haddad wanted more cooperation with the NDP. Lascaris wanted to be combative with the NDP and highlight the distinctions with the NDP. And a lot of people wanted one of those 3 people to win. And Lascaris ended up finishing second. But Annamie Paul was very clearly the choice of the party establishment. The former leader and all the big names in the Green Party wanted her. But she wouldn't answer questions. They did this thing at a debate where they did a quick fire round of questions where they asked people like, do you support a basic income? Do you support taxes, a wealth tax? Do you support, do you think that we need sanctions on Israel? Do you think that Canada needs to ban weapon sales to Saudi Arabia and all these sorts of things? And on many of these hot button questions, she would you were supposed to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down or do this if you didn't want to answer. And she did this for half the questions. And she defended the coup in Bolivia, and she suggested that actually the indigenous people of Bolivia do want the coup. She got off on an awful foot. And then also, once she won, then they started to demand that the NDP not run in a seat that they want her to run in Toronto, because there's a by-election to fill Bill Morneau's old seat in Toronto Centre. And they're like, we want the NDP to not run a candidate because we didn't run a candidate in the by-election with Jagmeet back in 2017, 2018 in Burnaby. But the NDP didn't ask for them to step aside. The NDP's margin of victory was bigger than the entire Green vote, and it was a seat that was given up by a former NDP MP who is now going to run for mayor of Vancouver, and he did so successfully, Kennedy Stewart. And so that was what happened, and now they want Jagmeet to step aside, or they want the NDP to step aside, right? While they only got 7% in the riding last year, and the NDP got much more than that, and were clearly the second place choice, the party most likely to defeat the Liberals, although it looks like it might be a safe seat for the Liberals anyway. The reality is they've already started off with her leadership as being whiny, irrelevant, eco-capitalist, redundants. They had a chance to do something. Selfishly as an NDP partisan, I was like, oh God, if Lascaris wins or whatever, it's going to cause issues with the left. We're going to have to hopefully build a unity. Like, he's going to bring a lot of great ideas, but my God, like, how are we going to navigate this? Like the Green Party is actually, gasp, going to be relevant for once in my goddamn life. And then they went with Anime Paul, and I was like, okay, fine, whatever. They don't mean anything. You know? Like, yeah. That's my view. They had a chance for relevancy, and they blew it away when they didn't pick Lascaris or Haddad. And that's not to say that it would have been a guaranteed success. Maybe it didn't succeed. Maybe the Lascaris experiment didn't work because the party would have, like, the contradictions of the Green Party would have ripped the party apart. I don't know. But it would have actually been trying something. Eric Aquarius says, how old did Giuliani think that chick was? Well, that's an interesting question. The joke was, are you printing something? You want me to pass it to you, or? No. Oh. Did something print? Yeah. I didn't print anything. No, just want. Uh-oh. Is it Russia, guys? Is it Russia? Something from David. Is that me? Oh, I don't know. It's something here about Lee something. It's definitely you. Don't read names in case it's... Yeah. No. Something about Russia or something, guys. We're getting hacked by Russia. No big deal. Okay. So, basically, the line in the video is that the narrative is, and go check out my video on it after the stream, and do some of the reading of what's going on there, because basically the story is Borat in the movie has a teenage daughter who's like 15, 16, and he wants to marry her off to like an American. And so he's going through the United States, and that's one of the side plots of the show. And also in this clip, she is portraying a conservative journalist. So she's not acting as a 15-year-old in the scene, to be clear. And I note that in the video, and a lot of people have noted that. But she very much clearly looks very young, I think. I don't know how old she thought she was. I guess Giuliani could assume that, you know, she wasn't saying she was like a student journalist. He could assume that she was at the very least in her early 20s. Because let's say she graduated from university, from journalism school, and was now working as a junior journalist at some sort of outlet. That might have put her in her early 20s. So yeah, Giuliani probably didn't know ultimately that she was 15 or 16 and then tried to do something anyway. But she very much was super young. And I don't want to age shame, but like, he's in his 70s. This girl is young enough to be his granddaughter, right? Like, clearly. Yeah, AK the Scholar, if you want to send me stuff on this, you can send it on Twitter. Also, AK, this is a good chance to remind folks, here is the Discord. I don't know, a lot of you are already members, but if you're not, click this to join the Discord, and that's where people often share things that are going on in the world, whether I'm covering it or just because they're interested or other folks in the Discord are interested. So also consider sharing things in the Discord. And that means that it won't just be me that sees it, but other people that see it. And we have other people that make videos or that do writing, so that might be a good place to post it as well. And that's like, that's a space where it's like only people that are really like fans of the channel, friends of the channel, are members of the Discord. Oh, we got a couple people joining already. Great to see. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of like what's happening there, right? Like, I mean, I have to assume that he assumed that the girl was likely of age. That's what I would suggest. But I don't know. I do find it very interesting that QAnon has not, to my knowledge, started talking about the need to protect people from Rudy Giuliani. Maybe they're just taking a day off QAnon. Maybe they're just taking a day off. It's a busy election. They're just taking a day off. And, Giuliani has been saying that it's selectively edited, that this is an attack on him because he is breaking open the story of Hunter Biden, and that this is big Hollywood trying to discredit him and therefore discredit the Hunter Biden story. But I don't think that's the case. Look, what he did was bad, right? And I mean, one thing that I find interesting, and this is something that we're going to have to wait and see given what actually comes in the piece, but as I noted in my video, if you, again, go check it out as soon as the stream is done. But as I noted in the video, Josh Gad, who's an actor and who saw the movie, he basically tweeted out that, he saw it and he says it's actually a lot worse than what he's seen in the media coverage, which might be to say that what Rudy does or what he says or the mannerisms he uses or whatever are actually less funny and more like troubling. And now that's speculation, yes, but that's what, somebody who's, a famous Hollywood actor has said upon seeing the movie, right? And he said, I've seen a lot of movies and documentaries. This is by far the most disturbing thing I've seen in either. So I don't know. Maybe, it's funny, but maybe it's not that funny. Maybe what Rudy Giuliani did was actually, kind of very disrespectful and bad. And it's not a joke. We can laugh at Rudy because he's an idiot, but also it's what did he do? We'll have to wait and see. Just following up to see if there's any news. Talking to the Surfs again, they say we're working on the back channels. We're gonna see what's happening there about this potential stream. So that will be something to look forward to. If that happens, I'll of course let you guys know. It'll likely be on Twitch, but maybe not. I mean, if some of the bigger names are on YouTube more than they're on Twitch, maybe we'll do it here. But I think the way Twitch works is that if you're a big Twitch streamer, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're a big enough Twitch streamer, you actually can't stream off Twitch. I think once you reach a certain status, your content has to be stream exclusive to Twitch, which is why you don't see the Surfs or Hasan ever stream on YouTube. They only stream on Twitch. They put their clips here. They clip their shows and then they put them on the channels here, but they don't stream here. Which makes sense. I guess maybe they get special perks for being big streamers, and so Twitch demands, exclusivity in exchange. But that would make it so that we'll probably do it on Twitch if it happens. Three new people in the Discord. Love to see it. Love to see it. What's happening right now? Yeah, so just that story, I'm trying to look that story up. It really does just seem, because there was that story about the FBI, that there was going to be they were doing some kind of update on, election tampering, but it really does seem to me that it is sort of more of a cautionary tale. Something that broke just as we came on. Basically, the story is from CNN, and I want to read it out to you guys. Because sometimes I want to see if I want to see if it is. Let me see. I want to see if there's actually something here. Okay, so this is from CNN. It says Director of National Intelligence John Radcliffe said that both Iran and Russia have obtained U.S. voter registration info in an effort to interfere with the election, including Iran posing as the far-right group Proud Boys, sending intimidating emails to voters. Quote, this data can be used by foreign actors to attempt to communicate false information to registered voters as they hope will cause confusion, sow chaos, and undermine your confidence in American democracy. So it might be direct state interference. Maybe it's something more ad hoc. I'm going to post a link in the article. If people are wondering what that was, there were emails that went out today, and I want to read these out to you. I'm going to send this to you again. This broke earlier today, and I want you guys to kind of see it. This is there were emails being sent out, and I think this is what they're referring to, at least indirectly. There are emails that went out from people purporting to be the Proud Boys, sending them to folks who apparently they knew were registered Democrats. And at first I thought maybe they're just sending these out to everyone, and knowing that about half of people are registered Democrats, that people would see it. But this email right here, let me send this to you guys. I know I'm dropping links here, but I'm not quite set up just at this moment to throw everything on screen as quickly. So the Proud Boys are not Iran, but I think the point is that groups are getting this information and posing as these groups. And so whether it is the Proud Boys or whether it's groups purporting to be them, these are emails people were getting. This isn't fake. Again, the motivation behind them might, or the extent of which might be exaggerated, I'm not sure. But this was an email sent to someone. These are real people. And I'm going to read one out to you. It says here, it's from Proud Boys, a little on the nose, saying, vote Trump or else. And they have the person, all of this is blacked out for their security. We are in possession of all your information, address, telephone, email. You are currently registered as a Democrat, and we know this because we have gained access into the entire voting infrastructure. You will vote for Trump on election day, or we will come after you. Change your party affiliation to Republican to let us know you have received our message and will comply. We will know which candidate you voted for. I would take this seriously if I were you. Now, you might say that's like the scammiest scam to ever scam a scam. Even if it's true that they got all your info, they won't be able to tell who you voted for. They won't be able to tell that. But if you live in the right state and you fool just enough people, it doesn't matter how bad your scam is. You guys get those scam calls where it's like, we're from the IRS or we're from the Canada Revenue Agency, and it's clearly like a robocall being like, you're under audit, and if you don't call us back within an hour, we're going to report you to the police. And it's like they might have to send that call to 10,000 people to get one nibble, but it might be worth it for that nibble. And so those are some of the things going out. Here, let me, that was the email, that Twitter one, that was just the email I read out. That was the email I read out. Yeah, it might be a private account. That's interesting that you couldn't open the link. Let me try this one right here. That, I think it's because I linked to the photo, which maybe I can't do. Here's a link to the tweet. It shouldn't be a private account because it's on like the trending tab. So that's what they're suggesting. Now, some people are saying that this is like an attempt to make Trump look good or protect him, because maybe the goal is to say that Iran is doing this, and I don't know. What they're saying, what basically what they're saying is somebody is intimidating voters, and it seems like they're intimidating Democratic voters. And I mean, the thing is like, it doesn't matter where it's from, really, right? Like,
It matters where it's from.
I mean, yes, it does, but like, don't forget that there was the big scandal a couple weeks ago where Jacob Wall, who is like a born and raised American, was sending out robocalls to people in Detroit and other cities in Michigan, saying to those people, if you vote either by mail or in person, the police will come and arrest you. They'll serve your warrants. They'll double check your taxes and audit you. So if you want to protect yourself, don't vote either in person or by mail. And they were saying that to people to scare them away from the polls. And those were Americans disinforming and voter suppressing other American citizens. And they were targeting communities that were at least statistically more likely to include African Americans because they were targeting like urban Detroit, just with robocalls to every number they could get. And so, yeah, I get it. There probably is attempts by certain countries to influence elections. Like, let's be real. The U.S. has literally launched coups to achieve results. We just saw one in Bolivia that Canada and the U.S. supported. Right? If we didn't help directly, we legitimized and solidified the coups. Only a ton of strikes and grassroots democracy and a huge electoral victory, could stop that. The people of Bolivia won, but more often than not, when the U.S. wants a coup, they get a coup, and the coup works more often than not. That's why America hates Cuba. It's an eternal symbol. A middle finger to American imperialism, right? Like that's why Cuba is such a thorn. But the reality is, like, the U.S. isn't the only country that has global interests, right? So, like, it's not unreasonable to assume that other countries that are big and powerful won't use direct and indirect methods to achieve their electoral results, right? So yeah, is it possible that groups in Russia and groups in China, groups in Iran have certain desires and they want to use those tools they have to achieve certain results? Makes sense. It doesn't mean that the reason Trump won is Russia. It doesn't mean that the reason Biden would win if he does win will be China. But it is to say that, like, look, the United States has to deal with the fact that they are not a special snowflake. Right? Like, the United States cannot literally stick its finger in every goddamn pie in the world and then cry when they get some emails from Russia or Iran or China trying to interfere with the election. That's my view. So for me, it's like that's where, like, that's something to consider. The United States has interfered with the elections of so many countries, including its allies. You know what I mean? Like, including its allies. So, yeah, I don't know. One thing I think that's important with this information is, like, don't trust these sorts of emails. Like, go to your official electoral things. Look to politicians and people you trust personally for your voting information. If you get an email telling you your polling station has changed, don't just trust that. If you get information that, your mail-in ballot procedures have changed, don't just trust that. Verify that information with, trusted sources, hopefully multiple sources. That's the story here. Because again, it doesn't strictly matter to an individual where the disinformation is coming from. Sure, for the state, maybe it matters, some random troll that wants Trump to win lying to people versus something from the Kremlin, quote unquote. But for you, like, you just want to vote. If you want to vote, you want to vote and you want your vote to count. right? Like, whether you're voting for Biden or Trump or whoever, it doesn't matter. It does matter, don't vote for Trump. But, like, you know, whoever you're voting for, you want your vote to count. And so that's why this disinformation is bad. And again, I've gotten into this argument with people. And again, I'm not a vote shamer. I'm really not. But one of the arguments I've often heard from people, again, I've heard this argument is, if voting actually changed something, they wouldn't allow it. Which is supposedly to say that, like, look, capitalism only allows us to vote because nothing would ever change, and we're all just sheep within a pen. And we can go wherever we want in the pen, and as sheep, we can decide to hang out on this side of the pen or on the other, but our votes are meaningless because ultimately the shepherd is guarding the gate. But if that's true, why do some people work really, really hard to make sure other people don't vote? Right? Like, you know? Why not? Like, why? And so that's something to look at. Who is trying to stop you from voting? When the Supreme Court shot down some of the Voting Rights Act policies, frameworks, a few years ago, just before 2016, it was overwhelmingly Republican-dominated states that started making it harder for specifically black people to vote. Because your vote does matter. Your vote matters. Voting matters. Like, don't, like, use it however you want. Again, don't vote for Trump. Voting for Trump is stupid. Don't vote for him. You vote for a third party, vote for Biden, whatever. But, like, vote. And be mad when people are trying to steal your vote. Like, I hate, like, that strand of doomerism. Like, that doomer strand, which is, like, voting doesn't matter. Well, it's like, if voting doesn't matter, why did they not let women vote? Why was it such a fight to get votes if voting didn't matter? Why was it such a fight for 18-year-olds to get the vote instead of just being at 21 if voting didn't matter? Well, the votes matter, Donald. Donald, and like, I'm not attacking you, Donald, here, but the Bush election showed me that having a governor as a brother matters, not the votes. Well, look, I don't want to suggest that election was not, like, rat fucked a little bit, right? Like, that's the terminology. I don't want to suggest that. I do think that in a fair world, like, somebody good would have been president. But, like, in a fair election, Gore should have won that election. But let's also be clear that in a hypothetical universe where Gore beat Bush by an extra million votes, they likely wouldn't have stolen that election. Because it was only a few thousand votes. And I'm not blaming Nader. I'm not blaming Nader. But I am saying that when you, like, all the ballots that got thrown out because of the hanging Chad, what if 1 million more people voted? Either because 1 million more people voted for Gore, or some people didn't vote for Bush but voted for Gore instead, they wouldn't have been able to steal the election. Again, in Bolivia, and look, I'm not saying they won't try another coup. Like, I'm not saying that. But if that election was razor thin, there's no way they would have let the MAS win. There's no way they would have let Arce win. They would have found a way to cheat. But as much as we think, like, the system is fully rigged, there's a lot of parts to a democratic wheel. Even in, like, shitty systems, right? Like, there's individual polls, there's individual ballots, even with the electronic system, there's individual machines. There's hundreds of millions of people with tens of thousands of officials in some cases and volunteers. It's hard to fully rig an election so hard that you can invalidate a massive victory. So, like, my view is If Gore won by the margin Hillary won by in popular vote, because he just barely won the popular vote. But if he won by the margin Hillary won by, and you divided those votes up proportionally by gains, he would have been president. They would not have stolen it from him. At some point, the margin was too big, and they wouldn't have stolen it. It would have been too hard. But you can steal an election when it's just a few hundred or a few thousand votes. But what if he won Florida by 100,000 votes? Would they have been able to steal it? I don't know. Like, the having your brother be the governor advantage might not be worth 100,000 votes. Maybe it's only worth 5,000 votes, right? Like, I don't know. Voting matters. I mean, Comrade Internet, you're right. Like, I get what you're saying. Like, oh, and yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not defending those people who are like, oh, Bolivia showed us that you can vote out fascism, aka, like, here in America, we don't have to worry. Like, no. Bolivians didn't just vote. They rioted in the streets. They had general strikes, mass protests. Yeah, they did things that Americans since Debs, or maybe not since Debs, since the 1930s haven't done, or Canadians for that matter haven't done. They haven't, they're protests like we haven't seen in North America. But it is to say that, like, you know, your vote does matter. And I do think a nightmare scenario, because I don't see Trump winning by a lot. I don't. If he wins, it's going to be razor thin like last time. So a nightmare scenario is a narrow result. A narrow result where, say, Biden wins by about the same amount Trump won last time. Where, say, he wins Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Florida, but he only wins them by 200,000 votes evenly distributed in those 4 or 5 states or whatever. That's where Trump could steal the election. That's where Proud Boy fuckery could steal the election. Like, that's what I think a lot of people are concerned about. Like, that's the issue. That's the issue. I mean, like, Trump is trying to pull a coup, but a Trump coup only works in certain parameters. One of the parameters is, yes, getting Amy Coney Barrett on the court. I don't think John Roberts goes ahead with a coup. But does Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett and Alito and Thomas go with a coup? Maybe. Those 5 might go with a coup. So that's one of the things, getting Coney Barrett on the court. It's not official yet, but it's looking likely that she will get on. But I think it's also, you know, you need enough of a margin. Like, you need a margin of victory so that your efforts to distort the election actually are meaningful, and that, you know, enough Republicans at various levels are, you know, that they feel it's worth the risk. Because if they know that you're likely down and no one's going to believe your efforts to distort the election, they know that they're just they're anchoring themselves to a sinking ship. But if Trump is credibly close enough that where a bit of cheating and lying and stealing can take the election, then maybe they could. Right? So, like, that's the thing. So there is certain value, I think, in a big victory. Like, for instance, just one example, was the hypothetical fear, and this is and I'm not making this up. This is this was Bernie's personal fear, was that most Democrats are voting by mail, most Republicans are voting in person. Now, not every Democrat's voting by mail, of course, and not every Republican is voting in person, but, like, the statistics show that. At least they did, you know, a few weeks ago. And the fear was the polls tighten a bit, and because of that discrepancy, in some states, maybe the ones that matter most, maybe the mail-in ballots take a little bit longer to get counted, And Trump can say at the end of the election night, he's winning Florida, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan. A lot of votes still to be counted, but maybe they're mostly mail-in ballots. And so then Trump and then his media apparati and his officials and friendly Republican officials on local and state levels, if applicable, will work to find a way to shred or exclude those ballots. None of this is a conspiracy, guys. Rick Scott, the Florida senator, former Florida governor, Rick Scott, came out and put a bill in front of the Senate to basically say that any ballot not counted 24 hours after polling closes would be automatically excluded. So even if the ballot was in a week before the election, if it didn't get counted by, say, 8 o'clock on November 4th or whatever, it would be excluded. Now, that bill didn't pass, but it shows you the motivation. Make the count slow, make the process slow, get your in-person votes counted first because they're Trump votes, put the mail-in votes to the back, and then declare them fraudulent, declare them delinquent, declare them late, whatever. That's what you do. Now, if Biden's leading by 10, then there is a chance that even with this discrepancy, Biden's still winning on night one, and his lead only gets bigger over the next day or two. And so it could be one of those things where, the count will be a bit slower than usual, but it doesn't matter because Biden's won Florida, and it's like he's got a 5-point lead in Florida or a 3-point lead in Florida, and all the votes from the Miami are still coming in, which and more blue parts of the state are still coming in. And if Biden wins Florida, it's very likely over. It could be over that night anyway. And so that's where margins matter. Yeah, something like, who's saying it here? Darshan saying, don't get complicit. Yeah, don't get complicit. Like, Trump can still, there's a bunch of things. One, you have to consider that, the Republicans are generally better at getting their vote out, that Trump does have incumbency advantages, that last time the polls they weren't hugely off, but they were off in Clinton's favor, and that, generally elections do get a little bit closer as you get closer to the date. And so I do worry about people getting complacent. I do worry about that. Trump can still win, or more accurately, Biden can still blow it. More accurately to put it. This election is not over yet. But one thing I will say, and I've talked about this before, if I show you the RCP, the polling averages, Trump Biden, I'm going to drop these two links in the chat. Here is Trump Biden. Look not only at the numbers, guys, but also at the graphs. So if you look here at the numbers, right? If you look here at the numbers, Biden is leading on average by 7.5 points nationally. Now, of course, in a presidential election, the state votes matter more. But most people have said that when you win by 7 or 8, it would take a truly gargantuan misdistribution of votes to lose this election. Hillary lost the Electoral College winning by about 2 something, like just over 2%, I believe. If she would have won by 4%, she would have won the election. She would have 100% won. Biden winning by 8, 7, or 8 is almost certainly going to be good. There's a couple outliers here, but the average is clear. Biden is leading quite substantively. But if you look at the graph here, look at this graph. There are some moments where it tightens. For instance, earlier on this year, in May, I don't know in May, the gap went down to about 5 points. But then gap's been as big this year, at least, as well over 10. And so right now, you'll see that the gap changes a little bit now and then, but Biden and Trump never get that close. Most of the year, most of it, Biden has led by about 7 to 9 points. Right? And again, people say, well, the polls were wrong in 2016. Well, they weren't that wrong. They were wrong, but only by a little bit. But one thing I will say, again, look at this. Clinton versus Trump. This is Clinton-Trump RCP from 2016. Same website. Same website. This website, now this is Clinton-Trump. This website, when all the final polls were included, the average was a Clinton plus 3.2. And she ended up only winning the popular vote by 2.1. So the polls were off 1.1%. So if you assume the same thing and you give Biden one and you give Trump an extra 1.1, taking it from Biden even, you shrink that margin from 7.5 to 6.4, Biden still likely wins. But look at this graph, guys. Look at this graph. Look at this graph. Clinton has some periods where she leads big, even bigger than Biden in some periods. But look at this graph, guys. There are various points throughout the spring and summer, and even into the fall, where Trump catches Clinton or gets very close, or even in rare instances, overtakes her. Look at this. Look at this graph. And you can see that while Clinton was clearly the favorite, the graph showed a consistent up and down. Right? Yeah, no saying COVID's fake. COVID's real, guys. One, I don't want to get my channel struck. COVID is real. Wear a mask. Socially distance. But yeah, so look at that. Like, look at that graph, and you'll see that Clinton had a lead, but it's not the same. It's not the same. She had leads similar in size, but look at the volatility of her lead. And that's what matters. Also, you have to consider that Trump built a different sort of Republican coalition in some ways than other Republicans, and he won states Republicans don't often win. And so I think one of the arguments is that pollsters didn't have a good model for a Trump-style Republican campaign. And so it might be the case that they've refined their model, and by refining that model, they have a better sense for how to capture Trump votes, which means that maybe polling errors won't be as significant. Although that's speculation, mostly on my end. To be fair. And as Kevin notes here, like, yeah, there's several states where Biden is polling really good. Like, for instance, I don't know if you look here, battleground states, Biden is up on the RCP. He's up 2.1. He's up 2.1. In Florida. He's up 5 in Pennsylvania. He is up. Let me see. He's up 5 in Pennsylvania. He is up 5 in Wisconsin. He is up 2.5 in North Carolina. He's up 8 in Michigan. He is Ohio is a bit of a draw right now. There's less polling in Ohio, but he's tied in Ohio basically. Which Ohio is a little bit more of a red state than a swing state compared to Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. He is up 6 in Minnesota. He's up about 1 in Iowa. He is up 3 in Arizona. He's down 4 in Texas, but some polls have shown that closer. But Texas, even being considered a battleground, is a bit special. He is up 5 in Nevada. He is up 1.2 in Georgia. New Hampshire is a swing state, believe it or not. A lot of people forget that. It's small. He's up 11 in New Hampshire. That's a swing state. He is up 11 in Maine. He is up a ton in Colorado and in New Mexico. And that doesn't include other key states. So that's like something to consider. So don't get complacent, but don't just knee jerk and say that like, oh, this is exactly like 2016. There are several key differences. Another key difference, and this is what polling has indicated, is back in 2016, they asked people, if you hate both Clinton and Trump, who are you voting for? And what they found was, when people disliked both of the candidates, they generally were more likely to go vote for Trump. Says, I don't like Biden, or excuse me, I don't like Clinton, I don't like Trump, but I'm going to go to Trump. And the reason I think is because Clinton wasn't technically an incumbent, but she sort of was running to be like Obama 3. Like, if that makes any sense, right? She was running to be Obama's president again. Like, to continue the Obama administration. And what happened there is that, you know, people were like, well, I don't like what's going on with Obama. I'm not a big fan of Trump either, but he's different, so I'll give him a shot. That's what enough people said. This time around, people are saying, look, I don't like Trump or Biden. And when they say that, they're more likely to vote for Biden because Trump's the incumbent now. And there are a lot of advantages to being an incumbent. But one of the disadvantages is you suck now. So even if you're 100% incorrect in saying, and I'm not saying Trump is, but even if you're 100% correct in saying, look, I get you don't like what it's like right now, but it'll be worse under the next guy, the other gal, people will often ignore that. And they'll say, look, things suck now. I want to try something different. And so Trump is seeing the other side of that double-edged sword. And so Trump running as a wild card candidate without any direct political record is not the same kind of context as running as a president with 4 years of a record and not a particularly good or popular record. Right? Like that's the distinction. And that's one of the reasons why this election, both in terms of how the polling is right now, but I think also in terms of, you know, those people that have made that make up their minds on the last day or two. And that's where you can maybe see some movement in the polls. Like Clinton, again, she lost a little bit of support in that final week for a variety of reasons, whether it was Comey or whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is people switch at the last moment. And I don't know if that switch is going to benefit Trump this year. I just don't know. One thing you can also say might benefit Biden is that because more people are voting in advance and by mail this time, because they want to avoid a COVID wave on with everyone going on election day, people are locking in now. And so you like that. You like being able to lock in when you're leading because you can't really change your vote. I don't believe you can anyway, right? Like if you vote early, you can't go to them and say, actually, I voted 7 days ago and I voted for Biden, but then Biden said something I really didn't like and now I don't want to vote for him anymore. I don't think you can change your mind. And so I definitely think that's a factor. And so if you're leading, having all these ballots locked in gives your opponent less of an opportunity to pull off like a 48-hour, sorry, my hair's on my face a little bit there, a 48-hour comeback like in the same way, right? So that's just something to look at. The state can change the vote for you. See, is that everywhere, Donald, or is that just in some states? And again, I wonder how many people would actually exercise that right. Because maybe hypothetically, if they keep your ballot, because what they do in some places is they have you mail a particular type of ballot where you have your mail-in voting with all your information you send in so they can identify your info. And then you put your ballot in an envelope inside that envelope, which is the envelope to keep your ballot secret. So they know you're Joe Smith from Spokane, right? Or you're Jane Doe from Des Moines, but they don't know who you voted for because that vote is in a second envelope in the thing. So hypothetically, if they didn't open that first ballot and they just had it there in the pile, they could hypothetically give your ballot back and let you change it. But I don't know how practical that is. I know for primaries, that's mattered before because one of the arguments, and I'm not saying it's anyone's fault, but one of the arguments for why Charles Booker fell just a little bit short to Amy McGrath in the primary there, when Charles Booker would have been such a better candidate against Mitch McConnell. God, he would have been so much better. Amy McGrath is awful. Stop sending her money, guys. Send your money to Jamie Harrison in South Carolina if you're gonna donate to anybody, to like a non-squad type candidates. Send it to like Jamie Harrison at least. You know? Like, that's something to look at. But honestly, I think that the reason why he fell short in part was a lot of people voted by mail because of COVID, and they kind of locked in their votes, and he only really started taking off in the last couple weeks of that campaign. And I wonder if more people would have voted on the day of, he might have had a chance to win. Big Joel, this is somebody shared this. Comrade Internet shared this on the Discord. So join that Discord if you want to see it. But Big Joel, I don't know if you guys watch Big Joel. He makes fun videos. But Big Joel said, I'm going to read it out to you guys. Said, honestly, if Trump is planning to stay in office after losing the election, voting for Joe Biden is the clear accelerationist pick. Like, if Biden loses by like 20 million votes, or if Trump loses by 20 million votes, but attempts a coup, I personally feel that's the best chance for serious civil unrest America has right now. Now, of course, I don't expect anyone is going to be winning by 20 million votes. I don't expect that. But I mean, and that's from September. Sorry, just to clarify, that's from September. But like, yeah, I mean, what do you guys think about that? I mean, if Trump does attempt something like that and it fails, it might mobilize a lot of people against him. But then you have to still hope that those people stay mobilized. Again, the big concern is that like Biden wins, which I do think is a better option. And then everyone goes back to brunch, right? Everyone goes back to brunch, guys. Brunch in January. Let's buy stocks. I'm going to buy some brunch futures. You know, right? Like, brunch. They're going to all go back to it. And everyone's going to forget what just happened. And everyone's going to forget 2008 when everyone went to brunch after Obama won. And then 2022 is going to hit, and the midterms are going to be a bloodbath, and the Republicans are going to dominate those midterms. And then 2024 is going to happen, and welcome President Tom Cotton with Ivanka Trump as his VP or some kind of insanity like that. Like, you know what I mean? That's my concern. That's one of my concerns. Now, I've heard some people make an interesting point, and I find this very fascinating, that unlike in 2008, there's an actual organized left in like electoral politics. They might not be as radical as everyone wants, and they might not be as big as everyone would like, but like there was no AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. There was Bernie and like Dennis Kucinich, you know, Barbara Lee was around, but there was no like left movement in the United States organized 12 years ago in politics. There were social like, unions and all sorts of like grassroots organizations, but there was no Bernie style movement. And so when 2010 came around, no one was ready for the midterms. And so what about this scenario where the libs go back to brunch, but the rest of us, like on the left, like we're getting ready to rip on Biden? Because you guys better believe that when Biden wins, if Biden wins, like we're gonna we are not gonna be defending his BS. In fact, on this channel, while I have been, criticizing Trump more, I still put out videos critical of Biden. Put out one a couple days ago where I criticized his approach to, or had AOC criticize his desire to put people in cabinet. I've criticized Pelosi on the stimulus deal, things like that. But we're going to be, if the Democrats win, like we're focusing there. And if the libs go back to brunch, why don't we, mobilize to have even more progressives win midterms in 2022? Right? Like, if the libs aren't motivated for the midterms, that could make another AOC, another Cori Bush, another Ilhan Omar, another Rashida Tlaib, make those kind of victories more likely if they're not mobilized, if they're not ready. Right? You could elect more progressives at the primary level if everyone's just sitting happy because Biden won. And that's something to consider. Shin asks me if I support hate speech laws or why do I hate why do you support the hate speech laws? People who say things that are considered offensive should not go to prison. It's subjective. Well, I mean, it depends. Like, what? Like, as a rule, I guess what my position is, I want to avoid sending people to prison as much as is possible. I don't know if I believe we're ready for full prison abolition yet. But I would say far too many people go to jail for non-violent offenses, right? And so I would, in general, not be in favor of jailing people for those sorts of things. But I do think certain types of speech should be illegal in certain contexts, at least. And things like Holocaust denial, that shouldn't be legal. That shouldn't be legal. There's reasons why it's been made illegal. There's certain forms of speech that are unacceptable. And it's like was it Popper? We need to be intolerant of intolerance. We can't tolerate intolerance. We can't have good faith debates with Nazis. Yeah, I'm in belief of that generally. Now, is a hate speech ban always the best way to approach that? No, of course not. In some cases, you have to let idiots hang themselves with their own rope. So that's why, for instance, I don't think it's, proper to say ban people from having incorrect views. And I think that in certain spaces, people should feel free to have frank and open discussions. But yeah, if people want to say certain things like, I believe certain races are inferior, I don't know if that speech is should be tolerated as general free speech. Speech designed to hurt shouldn't be tolerated. You know? Canada and the US have different philosophies here, guys. And I'm not necessarily going to say which one's better, but like you guys have a more absolutist view on free speech. And Americans, you guys might like that. Here in Canada, we treat our rights through the lens of reasonability. And again, you might disagree or agree that every right has some kind of reasonable limit on it. Like, for instance, you have a right to, free speech, but you don't have a right to say everything. You have a right to, consume media. Like we censor certain media in Canada. There's certain types of illicit media involving, let's say, groups of non-consenting individuals. I don't need to use the word for it, but QAnon is very concerned about it. That we say is not acceptable speech. There's reasons for some of these things. And you might say that's absurdio ad reductum, but my point is, we can recognize that there are limits to free speech. There are limits to all sorts of things. You might say that even in the US, in Canada, we do not have the right to bear arms. It's not illegal, but we don't have the right in the same way. The right to bear arms in the United States, you could say there's a reasonable limitation. Should an individual be able to own a nuclear weapon in the United States? Some people might say yes, but others might say, despite the Second Amendment, I believe there are reasonable limits on that right. And so you might say the same thing for free speech. You might narrow it to things like slander. Is it free speech to lie about somebody? It might be. An absolutist view of free speech is, I should be allowed to say whatever I want without consequence. If I can call someone a criminal, even if they're not, and I am exercising my right to free speech, and I shouldn't be punished for that. That's a view, if you take an absolutist view of free speech, that there should be no censorship. And when I think, broadly defined, no coercive censorship, which would include potentially the state enforcing a civil penalty against you. Right? I don't know. Like, look at this. Like, I could maybe look this up here and give you guys a sense. Okay, so Holocaust denial in Canada is legally considered hate speech, I believe. Let me see. Like, there are complications here, and I don't want to speak directly. Let me take a look here. Yeah. It's just suffice it to say in Canada, we have certain hate speech laws. Now, again, how that's defined and enforced, can differ. I think, for instance, saying a group is genetically inferior, especially when that group faces contemporary or historical oppression, causes harm to that group. Right? I think, in some ways, lying about this pandemic and how early on in this pandemic, it was seen that people from East Asia, they were often targeted by people for being East Asian, for looking Chinese, because they were more likely to have it. And you had people like right-wingers on social media and then on these things saying that we need to watch out for these people because they have it. That form of speech, which is free speech, was causing harm to individuals. Amy says, censoring speech is dangerous in that your enemies become unknown. The fascist Achilles' heel has always been their mouth. The Achilles' heel has always been their mouth. See Trump for relevance. I don't know if I fully agree. I see your point, but also, at least in some cases, deplatforming works. Do we still talk about Milo Yiannopoulos? Who here knows who Milo Yiannopoulos is here? He's basically been deplatformed. Alex Jones still gets attention now and then, but not nearly as much before when he was allowed everywhere. Websites like Stormfront, former white nationalist websites, they've been very much isolated. Deplatforming can work. And I don't think you necessarily need to show good faith to people that don't show it to you. And I say that as somebody I was baptized in the Greek Orthodox Church, and the whole narrative, Jesus says turn the other cheek. I get that. But if a fascist is like, you need to respect my right to free speech so that I can build up enough support to murder you, why? Why do we need to give good faith defenses to fascists? Why? Do you guys ever see the video of Richard Spencer? You guys know Richard Spencer. Remember him? He's still around now and then. Richard Spencer and those like him basically admitted that they only want free speech now because they're in the minority. And they need free speech to protect them. But when they win, and they're good, they're going to win. When they take power, they don't want free speech anymore. So is it really worth defending free speech for Nazis? I don't know that it is. Right? I don't know that it is. I don't know. I'm not saying that you need to preemptively jail everyone that supports Richard Spencer, but I'm also not suggesting that there is, that free speech is an absolute, or that every form of idea that needs it. So the Surfs just shared this, making the ask to jug meat. I'm gonna put this up here just one sec. So of course, that the meme last night was that, is orange sus, right? Is orange suspicious? We should vote orange out in the we should vote orange out. Yeah, but I mean, we could say that about a lot of things, Dustin. Like, it's not always a guarantee that, like, oppression of the speech, like, serves the regime, but it's not always the case that, like, allowing it will make you stronger, right? Like, the Soviet Union fell when they opened up their speech. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, Orange Man bad is a thing. It is a thing that people will uniquely blame Donald Trump. And those are the brunch go back tours. That's what I'm talking about. So when some people say Orange Man bad, it's just them saying that any criticism of Trump is just off base. But when I think of Orange Man bad, what I think of is, you're right, Orange Man is bad. But Orange Man is bad in a context. Things happened to allow the bad Orange Man to become president. And those things were, yes, in the Republican Party, of course, but also in the Democratic Party, and also in broader society. Policies and ideas that were adopted and morphed by both parties. And so I think that, and as I noted in that video I did on AOC and other progressive Congress people like Katie Porter and Raul Grijalva and so many others, not even all Bernie people, but generally left of center Congress people, they sent a letter to the Senate, but they really meant it for Biden, saying no more CEOs in cabinet. And they said that, yeah, Trump has really amped up the nepotism and cronyism of federal politics. But it didn't start with him. And unless we change something, it's not going to end with him. And so Orange Man bad is important to fight. Not in the sense that you defend Trump, but in the sense that you defend, you reject the idea that Trumpism is only about one man. That's the takeaway there. That's the takeaway. Yeah. So that's what we're looking at. That's my viewpoint. That's my viewpoint. In terms of like going beyond it, like we're not going to get there if everyone just thinks Orange Man is bad. That's where we're at. And so again, with like I'm trying to find that quote, Richard Spencer, free speech. Because I want to just underline to you guys that they do not believe in it. And if somebody themselves does not believe in free speech, right, they don't necessarily need to have an absolute view of free speech, right? They don't need to have an absolutist view. But if somebody really believes that free speech is only a tool for them until they get power, then no more speech, then you should not engage in good faith. You should not. You should not. Good faith is something that people need to at least have at least a little bit earned. Okay, so here's a...
But as far as government...
Like, I don't know if you guys are going to... Well, here's the link. Let me see if I'm gonna bring this up here. Okay, let me know if you guys can can hear this. Let me know. Okay, let me know if you guys can hear this. Just a
But
short
as far
little
as
video.
government regulation, I mean, yes, I think in the short term we would favor government regulation of speech, but long term, are we even pro free speech?
No, of course not. But we have to use this platform in order.
So we're being radically honest here. And,
Yes,
yeah.
radically pragmatic. Yes.
Did you guys get that? I wanted to make sure. Like, did you guys get that? Okay. I'm going to play it one more time just to underline it. Just to underline that for you. Where was that? There it is.
But as far as government regulation, I mean, yes, I think in the short term we would favor government regulation of speech, but long term, are we even pro free speech?
No, of course not. But we have to use this platform in order.
So we're being radically honest here. And,
Yes,
yeah.
radically pragmatic. Yes.
Those are not people you give the benefit of the doubt to. That's just like, you don't do it. You don't do it. They're using free speech. They're using free speech to spread their propaganda, and they hope to build a massive support large enough and broad enough to take reins of power either by force or by the distortion of the electoral system or a combination therein, and then use their power to effectively ban speech. And so, I am not going to defend that person's right to free speech to spread white nationalist propaganda and disinformation. One, because those things are harmful, but two, because I know that the speech for them is an end to end free speech, either in general or in particular for people of color, LGBTQ folks, women, what have you. Right? So, that's my view. Yeah, I mean, Zachary, I agree that Jagmeet made a good call. I mean, I wish he would have been able to get more, but it's clear the Liberals won an election. My view is that, you know, while the BC election, a lot of people were concerned about that. The BC election is, I think, better timed because the COVID wave in BC is smaller than it is in Ontario and Quebec. This would have been a dangerous election to call, frankly. And I think Jagmeet is doing the right thing in keeping this parliament going. And I think Jagmeet is right. If Trudeau wants an election, he should go to the Governor General and say he no longer has confidence in the House. And that would likely lead to an election, because I don't see a Bloc NDP Conservative coalition happening. So I don't think O'Toole could say that he has confidence in the House. So we would go to an election. Because like they wouldn't ask the third or fourth party to form a government. So basically, Trudeau can have an election if he wants it, but he's got to stop this like dicking around and actually like go out and call it himself. Singh was right. Like, we're not going to give him his election that he wants. Yeah. I know people want to hear more CanCon, and I want to deliver more CanCon. This is why I'm really trying to get that Canadian podcast up. It's just been a long time with this COVID craziness and daycare and all that. That's where I really want to devote like full coverage to Canada. And you know, I still want to do more here on YouTube as well, but that's where I want to really kind of like put my focus on CanCon and also do more writing. I'm actually going to be writing a piece for a Canadian magazine, but It's sort of related to the AOC Twitch stream. And now I might be able to talk a little bit about the NDP stream as well, which might be happening. Maybe I'll know more about that. Justin has a super chat here. He says, how the hell can you achieve democracy in a fascist state that's overrun by corporatism? You've got to realize that you're looking at two rep parties. I mean, look, I get your perspective, right? I get your perspective that the current system does not actually represent a democratic one, especially when you consider the broader forms of democracy. Democracy in the workplace, democratic ownership of the means of production, democratic ownership of the national natural resources, and on and on and on. I get that. But the point is that what people will often say is that we don't live in a democracy. And I would agree, but democracy is not a light switch. It's a dimmer switch, right? There's no hard and fast definition for what is a democracy and what is not. Because every society, basically, every society has some element of democracy, and no society has perfect democracy. And it might not be good to have absolute perfect democracy on everything, of course, right? Like, there might be times where you need somewhat more representative systems. Not everything can be fully direct all the time, unequivocally fully democratic, right? The fact of the matter is, the United States has certain elements of democracy, and those elements are important, and those elements can be used to achieve other forms of democracy and improve on those existing elements. And that, again, I underline this, Justin, if the ruling parties were so convinced that the status quo was so concretely in their favor, why would they be so invested in cheating the system? Why put billions into cheating a system that doesn't need to be cheated? Why would the Republican Party, and to a lesser degree, at times, the Democratic Party, but mostly the Republican Party, put so much goddamn money and political capital into taking away the right to vote for certain people? Why would they do it if it didn't matter? Why? Why would they do it? Why would they do it? Why do the Republicans stop certain people from voting if voting didn't matter? Why? Why? There's an answer here, and it's because voting does matter. Voting might not matter as much as it should because we don't get to vote on the issues that matter most all the time, but voting still matters. Voting still matters. Sanwal says, now that production is spread out across the world, how can labor and unions create international class solidarity to oppose capital worldwide? Sanwal, thank you for the question. Honestly, if I had the answer to that, I'd be writing like the best-selling book for the left. I mean, look, that's the challenge of labor today. That and like how to build a Green New Deal in a national and global sense that, you know, preserves and expands workers' rights and freedoms. Those are the two big challenges: international solidarity and building a working class green future. Those are the two key challenges for workers. Maybe three being the challenges of potential increases of automation. I mean, I don't know. I mean, one challenge is that, one advantage is that we have technology to communicate in ways we didn't before. Going back to the 70s and 80s, it was very difficult for a working class person to know anything of what was happening in India, and for that Indian working class person to know what was happening in Ohio. And I'm not saying it's easy now, but it might be easier, or at least there's the potential there. I think that what you need to build organizations beyond national borders that are actually going to enforce things. This is where I think some manner of electoral politics can help. I think that if you elect governments that are actually serious about labor standards, like you can improve things through trade deals. I imagine, and again, I'm not going to be too Pollyanna about it because things won't change overnight. But imagine, for instance, if, say, Bernie Sanders became president and he mandated that any good, like he wanted to renegotiate NAFTA and basically said any good that enters the country has to be produced with a certain percentage of union labor. What if you made it a condition that workers must be paid a minimum amount of money to have that good be eligible for NAFTA or for any sort of trade deal? What if you said that, what if you said we are going to allow those individuals, in any case, to sue American companies here for crimes they have committed abroad? Right? Like, and Canada's actually done some of that with miners. Some people have argued they have a right to sue Canadian mining companies in Canada. So what if, for instance, you let people in Bangladesh sue American clothing companies for their abuses in the United States, so they can't run because they're headquartered here? Like there are things you can do, right? There are things you can do. You can build these rings of international solidarity, and governments, if they do have pro-worker forces, can use the levers of the state and of trade to demand certain things, right? Why couldn't you use the resources of the state to demand unionization and health and safety standards? Why not? Jason Kennedy, like that's my viewpoint. Like that's something we have to consider. Beyond that, unions need to show more international solidarity, especially Western unions. They need to be much more willing and proactive to share resources directly and indirectly with these developing world unions. That I think that's certainly a major factor. That's certainly a major factor. Jason Kennedy with the Black Cat sticker. Thank you so much, Jason, for the sticker and for the support. I very much appreciate it. Chase asks, what do I think about the lobster dispute? Okay, yeah, I'll talk about this quickly. Basically, in Nova Scotia, one of Canada's easternmost provinces, sort of close to Maine, for those looking at the map, there is a dispute going on between indigenous, Native American fishermen. We call them indigenous in Canada. They're Mi'kmaq people. The specific, peoples are Mi'kmaq. And there is a belief among the white fishermen, overwhelmingly white fishermen, that these indigenous people are breaking the law by fishing out of season and fishing in a way that supposedly affects conservation. But the Canadian Supreme Court, more than a generation ago now, about 21 years ago, confirmed that based on the original treaties in this land, Indigenous Canadians have a right to fish and hunt and gather resources to provide a quote-unquote moderate living for themselves. Now, that's never been defined, what a moderate living is. The government's got, not just Trudeau's government, but governments for the last 20 years, liberal and conservative, have punted that ball down the field, just ignoring the question. And so it's come to a head as really just a few dozen Indigenous men in an industry with thousands of boats have decided to set up ships in what is not the lobster season. And they've basically been attacked by what is, and I'm going to say this, white supremacist terrorism from these fishermen. They've literally torn out traps, and they've burnt down vehicles, and they've burnt down buildings. Looks like something out of Alabama from the goddamn 1950s. I feel for the fishermen because I know they work hard for their living. These are not like bankers, but like, fuck me, man. Like this is the closest thing we've had to the KKK in Canada, like in terms of imagery, since Saskatchewan. Back when Saskatchewan had its own KKK chapter. Literally burning down buildings owned by racialized people. The police are doing nothing about it. Nothing. Nothing. Look, the fishermen, like, look, here's the deal. The fishermen might have some points that even Indigenous rights are subject to some reasonable limits. And that because that hasn't been enforced, we don't know. But the point is, those reasonable limits have to be negotiated between First Nations and the federal government. And that hasn't been done because the federal government hasn't done it. Not just Trudeau, but his predecessors. Right? His predecessors as well. And so what's happening is no one has defined, for instance, what is a moderate living? What is that? Is it a certain amount of money? Is it a certain amount of lifestyle? Is it based on location? Does it move with inflation? Is it tied to the prevailing wages of the industry or the geography? Like, what is it? We don't know. And you might argue that even with that, maybe there are reasonable limits placed on conservation. Like, Indigenous people can hunt and fish out of season, but they can't hunt and fish 365. Maybe there could come to an agreement between First Nations and the federal government about reasonable limits even on that right. But the federal government hasn't done that. And so what's happening here is the federal government has failed to define these terminologies and work with Indigenous peoples and their communities to hammer this out. And so Indigenous people are like, well, look, until we have guidelines, we're just going to exercise our rights broadly, which they have a right to do. Right? So that's my view. The Indigenous people are basically 100% right here. And the fishermen are wrong almost totally, with the exception that they might have grievances, not with the Indigenous fishermen, but with the federal government. They should put pressure on the federal government and say to the federal government, look, you need to come in and define things. You need to define what a moderate living is. You need to define what a moderate, these sorts of things are. And so you can enforce that. And Indigenous communities can enforce that amongst themselves. And that way we can deal with that. But they don't really care about that. See, what matters to a lot of these guys, and this is, again, is that these non-white fishermen are fishing in white waters. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. I don't know. It's sad. It's really sad because I have like a lot of these fishermen work really hard. I get it. Jobs are not easy. Everyone thinks, oh, lobster fishermen, it's, lobster's so expensive, but like, it's not an easy living. They work a lot harder than I do, but my God, they're blaming the wrong people here. They're blaming the wrong people here. Yeah. Well, exactly, Comrade Internet, you're right. Like, look, they have legitimate grievances, but they're being over-magnified and they're totally targeting the wrong people. Like, and again, we have to underline this. It's like the amount of boats is totally different. The amount of boats is so insignificant, excuse me. Let me look this up. Like, trying to look this up. Like, I'm trying to find the actual info. If somebody knows what I'm talking about, maybe you can share a link in the description, guys. There's an infographic which shows, like, here are the total number of boats in the Nova Scotia lobster fishery, and here are the number of boats that have been set up by these particular Mi'kmaq communities, showing that even if they're doing things that are bad for conservation, quote unquote, it's such a minuscule part of the industry that the response has been totally disproportionate. And it is overwhelmingly about one thing. These people are mad that Indigenous people are getting to fish right now according to their ancient rights, and they don't. That's what it's about. Well, exactly, throwing back the apple. You're 100% right. You're 100% right. 100% right. That it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. But that's just me saying, like, you know how, like, I try to, especially when I look at working class people, like, you know, I try to see things sympathetically, but there's just, I don't hear. Because again, if they were protesting the federal government saying, we disagree with this fishing, we have concerns about it, they could still be wrong. They could still ultimately be wrong and maybe a little bit racist. But I could say, okay, look, they have legitimate concerns. The federal government has never really actually addressed this issue. The federal government needs pressure on it to define what a moderate living is and all of that. And maybe this will fix it. Maybe. Then I could have some sympathy, but you're 100% right. Yeah, like Jason Kennedy is saying here, there's about 550 Indigenous boats versus hundreds of thousands of non-Indigenous boats. It's just not equivalent, right? It's just not equivalent. So, and look, these treaties, like, they're contracts, right? Even Neil Gorsuch recognized the Oklahoma contract when he voted with the liberal judges, where he said, look, the USA made a deal. Like, it's one of the few moments I've respected Neil Gorsuch. We made a deal. And so Canada, and because we still recognize the Crown treaties, we made a deal. There was no end to the contract. Some of these contracts say as long as, like, the moon and the stars and the sun exist, they're still around. It's for eternity. We made a deal. We didn't make a deal until a certain date. We didn't make a deal, you know, until whatever. It's a deal with the Indigenous peoples, a nation-to-nation deal. Yeah. So, guys, I'm going to wrap on that. A lot of people are heading out anyway. We normally finish 10:20 or 10:15, 10:30. This was fantastic. Again, I want to thank you all for coming. We do this, if you're new here, click subscribe, obviously. And if you haven't clicked the bell, it means that you'll get most of my videos, or at the very least, you'll get the full 3 notifications a day if I post 3 videos. And then also, I want you to check out the Discord. I shared a link earlier, but I'll drop it again. I think I have it right here. Check out the Discord. And then also check me out on Twitter, for those who have yet to check me out on Twitter. That's a good place to get sort of my day-to-day, hour-to-hour thoughts. I probably do more CanCon on Twitter because I can just fire out quick little things. So if you want CanCon right there, check me out on Twitter. And in general, I post a video. For those who are new, I post a video at least once every day, but often, you know, 3, maybe even more a day, depending on the news day. So do check me out. If you want to support the channel, the biggest thing you can do is just watch the content, honestly. I know not especially now with a lot of people out of work, not everyone has extra money, but If you can, just make a habit of checking out the channel every day and watching the videos. It helps the channel grow and it brings the content to more people. But if you do have the desire and the means to support the channel, you can do so via Patreon or becoming a channel member here or through PayPal. And those give you various options to make contributions. So guys, thank you so much for coming. I very much appreciate it. I'll keep you up to date about any Among Us stream, whether it's here on YouTube or Twitch. Nothing confirmed yet, but it looks like something might happen. I'll keep you up to date. Have a good one. See you soon.